morning. My name is Bobby Wood, and I'm the teaching pastor here at Redemption Church. If this is your first time here, there is a guest card on the back table, and we encourage you to fill that out. And if you have specific questions you'd like to ask from us or prayer requests, we'd love to pray for you and what's going on in your life specifically. But we're going to continue this morning in the Gospel of John as we're walking kind of systematically through the whole book of John. And this Sunday, we're in John chapter 8, and so turn with me in your Bibles as we go there. And the title of today's sermon is, Which Family Do You Belong? So we're talking a little bit about family today. So I know one thing, just specifically in my family, that's pretty big is when it comes to Christmas. Christmas is a pretty big deal. And if your family, maybe it's the same thing. But I know that Christmas music has been playing starting to come on now, like on the radio and stuff, which should not happen. It should be a rule against that, right? Everybody with? No, nobody's with me. That's how I feel, right? But my wife would very strongly disagree with me on this one. So she could listen to Christmas music all year long, right? And when it comes to stuff like Christmas, everybody has different traditions in the family, and if you're not sure about that, and you get married, you realize that you have very different views when it comes to Christmas and traditions and expectations. And some of you guys maybe have been there and walked through that, right? Some of you, yes, no, just us? Okay, you and me, Lindsay, it's just we're the only ones. But so every family has different things that they do, things that they value, things that they hold are important. It's just what your family does. Some families, they have certain things that they'll do when it comes to dinner time, and some families will eat at the table. Some families will we're just going to hang out in front of the TV. We'll hang out and watch TV while we eat dinner, whatever it is. Everybody has different family values and what's important and also what's expected. So if you're a part of a family, there are certain things that are expected of you as part of that family. I know something that's really important for me. I've got 2 girls, 2 boys, and I'm trying to, especially with my boys, trying to raise them up to understand what biblical masculinity looks like. In a world that's very confused about the idea of masculinity, that doesn't understand what being a man in today's society and world is about, I feel like it's my job as dad to instill that in my boys. And also instill what biblical femininity looks like in my girls too, and I have a role in that. But just specifically for the sake of this illustration, talking about biblical masculinity. And so we have something called the Wood Warrior Code that we've kind of set up with our boys. And thanks to Splintered Wood Design for making this for us. Nick Erickson, we appreciate that. But these are kind of some things where my kids, especially my boys, they get in trouble. I kind of direct them back to this because I want them to know these are some values that we have, just part of being a boy in our family. So warriors protect the weak. Warriors go last. Warriors do the hard thing. Warriors do the right thing. Warriors never quit. Warriors speak the truth, and warriors don't make excuses. So when something happens, like maybe coloring a mural on a wall might happen, we walk through this warrior code, and we talk about that we do the right thing, and we don't make excuses about it. And I want my boys to know so that one day I'm training them to be men. And I want them to be men of God, to fight for His kingdom and to live for Him. But that starts in our family. That's an expected value that I have for my boys in our family. Every family has expectations and values, and the family of God is no different. When you're a part of the family of God, you're expected to live under the kingship and lordship of Jesus Christ. He sets the rules, He sets the standard, He sets the whole family, and you're a part of that family as a son and a daughter. You have all the rights of son, but you're also expected as a son to live under that family's values. But there's 2 different types of families, really 2 families that you can be a part of. One is the family of God, or the family of the world, the family of Satan, the devil, which we're going to talk about. Jesus has very harsh words to say towards the Jews in John chapter 8. And that's all there is. There's no other option. So either you're a part of one family or you're a part of the other family. There's no middle ground. And a lot of times, people who are in churches feel like they're part of the family of God because maybe they filled a card out one day, maybe they said a prayer, maybe they talked to a pastor or somebody, and that was the end of it. But I want to differ today because I think Jesus does between what it means to actually be a follower of Jesus, a disciple of Christ, and somebody who's just playing a religious game. Because it's not just some magic words that you say to be a follower of Jesus. I mean, just think about this. Jesus saw us in our sin. We rebelled from him. We turned away from him. We rejected everything that he had. And he came after us. He died on the cross, suffered a humiliating death, and the wrath of God poured out upon him that should have been poured out upon you and me. And he suffers that, and then he brings us into his family, adopts us into his family. He comes after us. And this is what he does. And so being a part of that family, it's not just, oh yeah, I believe in God, I'm good. I've been to church occasionally, I belong to God. It's not how it works. You can't just do a couple of things and you get the checklist and then all of a sudden you think that you're a part of the family of God. It's not about a checklist. It's not about a bunch of religious deeds and good works that can get you in before Almighty God. Then the other group would say, like, well, we think we're good anyways. Like, we're not really that bad of people. We take sin and we don't realize the severity of it. And so on both sides in this family, this world family, the family of Satan, the family of the world, you take the things that are of the world, things like sin, and we lower the standard so that we can kind of slide in. When there is nothing good in us, there's nothing good that we bring to the table. The only thing we have is clinging to Jesus as our life preserver, saying, God, save me of my sin. He brings this dead thing to life and brings it to himself and adopts us and pulls us a part of his family. And we go, God, Jesus, I need you. I need you. I need you. And we cling to him as a salvation for our souls, pledging our lives to him. So in John chapter 8, we're going to be in verse 31, and we're going to talk today about which family do you belong. I hope that you do some soul searching today. This is meant to kind of say, am I really a part of the family of God? Or am I a part of the family of this world? Which family am I a part of? And if you are a part of the family of the world, maybe today is the day that the Holy Spirit pricks your heart and you realize I am not a follower of Jesus and I need to turn to him for my salvation. Today is the day you join into the family of God. John chapter 8, verse 31. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. They answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? Okay, so let's take a step back to last week. Nick was preaching through the book of John and towards the end of verse 30. And in verse 30 it says, as he was saying those things, many believed in him. So again, Jesus was confronting these religious Jews and was trying to help them understand that they needed Jesus, that the authority came through himself, and that this was not some just derived authority he made up on his own, but he had all the authority. And turning to Jesus was the only hope for them. Now again, the Jews are waiting on the Messiah. They're waiting on this guy to come in, this king to overthrow Roman rule, and they're waiting on a physical king to do the heavy lifting and lift off all the Roman rule and free Israel to the time it was in David's time. So many believed in him. Many are believing, here's this Messiah. So what does Jesus say? If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples. What's he trying to do there? What's Jesus trying to differentiate between? I think it's that he wants to differentiate between disciples and not converts. Disciples and not converts. This is how we kind of phrase things in our culture today and religion. We think more in terms of converts. Like, okay, we want people to claim, they did this back in all throughout the church history, and people would say, hey, you should believe this. And someone would say, okay, I believe this. I guess I'm a Christian now. There's no heart change. There's no change in their understanding of who they are as a sinner before a righteous and holy God. There's none of this brokenness over sin. There's just a matter of saying, I guess I'm this now. Or like I was watching a show and it was talking about this, I can't remember exactly what time period or whatever, but it was in a certain area and they said, oh, everybody here is kind of Catholic, so if you're going to be in this area, you got to believe in Catholicism. And so like, okay, I guess I'm a Catholic now. That's fine if that gets me land and gets me all these other things. And that's what they just did. Sometimes we take Christianity like that. We say, I guess I'm just a Christian now. Let's try this out. Let's see if this works for me. You're hoping for an exchange of goods, right? Realizing, okay, I recognize Jesus as king. Yeah, that's good. He's Son of God. I'm good with that. Yeah, I guess I'm good. I'll sign up. Where's the line? Where's the piece of paper I have to sign up on to say that I'm actually a Christian? I'm good, let's go. That doesn't make you a Christian. Just like going to church doesn't make you a Christian as much as going to a garage makes you a car. Going to church doesn't make you a Christian just as much as going to a garage doesn't make you a car. Just because you're here, just because you signed some paperwork out, that doesn't make you a follower of Jesus. James chapter 2, verse 19 says, even the demons believe in God and they shudder. Or believe that God is one and they shudder. So what's he saying? He differentiates between that. There's the demons believe in God. We'll look through the book of Acts, and as those who are possessed by demons would come across like Paul and like, oh yeah, I know who this is. It's Paul. And then Jesus comes across some guys who are possessed by demons. They're like, yep, I know who you are. You're Jesus. What do you have to do with this, Jesus? Are you going to destroy us? Because they recognize who he is. They believe who he is. Yet they live in open rebellion to Jesus. Just because you know who Jesus is does not make you a Christian. Does not make you a follower of Jesus. Jesus was speaking to some of the most devout people in his time. Again, talked about this a couple weeks ago. These are people who memorized like the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. How many of you guys have read through Leviticus? Right? Okay, so they memorized it. Then they made books to basically commentaries on these books so that they would follow these laws so they wouldn't violate the laws. Then they made another set of books which would be commentaries upon those commentaries upon the law so they wouldn't break the law. That's how serious they were taking following the law. So when we're talking about people who understood what goodness was and righteous deeds and could fill a checkbox off, those were the guys that could do it. They lived good lives. And yet, Jesus is trying to say, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples. This was not just some fill out a card mentality. He wanted them to understand that if you were following Jesus, you were giving your life for him. You're giving your life to him. Think about this in terms of marriage. Me and Lindsay were talking about this the other day. But when we got married, my mother-in-law wondered after the wedding, because I had a very serious look on my face. He's like, is Bobby, was he really scared, or was he nervous, or what was going on? Was he upset? Was he not happy with where everything was going? And I was like, no, I was thrilled. I mean, it was a great, great day, one of the greatest days of my life. He said, but in that moment, I'm thinking about the seriousness of what I was committing to. I was committing to pledge my life to my wife, where if it came down to it and I had to give up my life for hers, I was pledging that I would do that. That's a pretty sobering thing when you think about giving your life for someone else. That this was a decision, this was a commitment I was making that day. And so when it comes to following Christ, it's not just saying, this is the Son of God. It's saying, I'm giving my life to him. I'm all in. If this is done, I'm done. I'm tying all of my hopes and dreams and everything that I am with Jesus. I am all in with Christ. That's what it is. That's what being a disciple means. And Jesus wanted to make sure, he did this often, as people would come and believe and they'd see a miracle, and come after, Jesus would say some really hard things. Say, is your heart with me? Are you willing to sacrifice it all if it came down to it for me? That's the type of heart level commitment I want. It's faith. And then he says in verse 32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. He wants the Pharisees, the Jews here, he's telling them, if you know the truth, if you come to understand this truth, it will set you free. But we live in a world where people seem to have a desire to know the truth. But the truth is, we often like the lie rather than the truth. We like to live in that lie. What do you mean by that, Bobby? That it seems like we of course we would want to know the truth. Well, I think a lot of people realize the comfort of the lie. And when you're pressed with realizing that my worldview, everything that has shaped, my parents believe, or I believe, or my family believes, and then all of a sudden you think, this might not be true, that's a scary place to be in. Because then you don't know how to pick up the pieces of your world. Your world's shattered, and you're like, what do I do with this? I'm starting to realize that this may not be quite right, but I can't entertain those thoughts. I'd rather believe the lie. And Jesus is saying the truth will set you free. And they answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. So they go back to, you don't understand, Jesus. We go all the way back to Abraham. We've never been a slave to anyone. Now, of course, we know Israel's history, and they've been slaves throughout their time. But they're talking about spiritually. We've never been enslaved to anyone. What are you talking about? How is it to say that you will become free? I think for many of us, we struggle with this notion of faith. Some of you guys have been raised in church your whole life. Maybe you're decent people. Maybe you're good neighbors. Maybe you have, you try to give some of your money away to those in need. Maybe even come from a good family. Doesn't save you. Maybe you say, well, I hear this sometimes when I'm talking to somebody. I say, well, I was born in a Christian family, so I'm a Christian. That doesn't save you. Being born in a Christian family does not save you. I pray to God every day that my kids would know the truth, that they would be saved one day. Because my faith is not my kids' faith. I pray for them, right? So being born in a Christian family doesn't save you. Good genealogies doesn't save you. Having that religious pedigree or good deeds or whatever, you have the good resume, it does not save you. Only having your heart turned towards Jesus as the only hope for your soul is what saves you. And living a life saying, I'm living it for him, I'm all in, the rest of my life, here I am. That is what saves you. Christianity is not something you can just try. It's not a trial. Like, hey, I'm going to try this new diet for the next 3 weeks and see how it goes. And if it goes really bad, I'll try something else and try the next diet, right? That's not how Christianity should go. It is, I'm giving my life to Jesus. Having that heart commitment to say that. Secondly, we see the difference between being a son and a slave. Sons, not slaves. Look in verse 34. Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The son remains forever. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are offspring of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. So 34, Jesus again is talking to, here are the people who are the best of the best. And he's saying, if you practice sin, you are a slave to sin. Well, these are people who think like they're doing pretty good. What do you mean I'm a slave to sin? What do you mean I'm practicing sin? Don't you realize I'm keeping the law? I'm doing everything you're asking me to do. We are good Jews and we're doing everything as best we can. And he says, if you practice sin, you're a slave to sin. He's calling them sinners. So when we look out into the world and we go, oh man, I'm looking down the street, I see that family, I'm a little better than them. I'm not so far off. I'm not quite as bad as that dictator who killed millions of people. I'm okay. Like, that's our standard. Like, I'm not as bad as the dictator. As if, like, that's a realistic standard, People do that. Why is that the standard? When we look at God's standard, it's perfection. All of us fall short. All of us sin. All of us are guilty before a holy, righteous, and just God. We're guilty. So he says to these religious people, you're guilty, you're sinners, you're enslaved. Verse 35, the slave does not remain in the house forever. The son remains forever. So in first century times, slavery was a common thing that happened in those days. So what would happen often is, Rome would go into a nation and they would have a fight and a war, and then they would enslave people, and then they would sell those slaves to probably Roman citizens to work in their homes. This is a common practice that happened a lot, and sometimes people would sell themselves into slavery Maybe they were impoverished or poor, and they knew that, okay, it's kind of like a job. If I sell myself into slavery, I'm at least going to get a good meal, and I'm going to be taken care of, so I'm not dying of starvation. So they had the opportunity to do that. Now, as a slave, obviously, even in those times, just like in modern day slavery, slavery did not entitle you to any of the rights and privileges of being in that house. So just because you were in that house, it did not make you a part of that house, a part of that family. There was a difference between being a son and a slave. However, in the son's side, sons still are expected to do what was necessary to be in the family. There's expectations as a son. You had to do certain jobs, certain chores. Some of you guys with kids, you expect things from your kids to get certain jobs done, some chores done around the house. One of the things that we have and we're getting our kids to do is to pick up the dog poop in the backyard. It's the best thing ever because then I don't have to do it. And they're learning how to pick up the dog poop in the backyard, and it's a great learning lesson, right, in life. So there's expectations of the sons to do certain work in the house. But a son is still not a slave. A slave can be removed from the home. I mean, even if they spend the rest of their life there, they're not going to get the same inheritance the son's going to get. Even if they were able to get something because the owner of the home felt like they wanted to give them something, they wouldn't get what the son got because the son is a son. He's part of the family. Sons also would carry on what their fathers had. So if, let's say, your father was a fisherman, so in James and John, their dad was a fisherman, it was probably likely that they were going to carry on the father's fishing business. I mean, it was kind of inherited. You passed it on. Your son apprenticed with you, and then you took on the business when they left. So he says the son is not the slave. There's a difference here. Just because we are in a church does not make us Christians. Just because we have Bibles does not make us Christians. Just because we read our Bibles does not make us Christians. It's what Christians do, but it's not what makes us followers of Jesus. He says here in verse 36, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So he talks about sons and slaves, and then he shifts the focus. If the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed. Well, which son is he talking about now? Himself, the Son. The only entrance into the family of God is through Jesus, through him alone, through his blood, his finished work on the cross. If we turn to him for salvation, he is what grants us right into the family of God. He brings us into the family. He came after us when we were rebellious and turning away, and this is what brings us in, is him allowing us privilege into the kingdom. From his blood, his payment of our justice on the cross. He does that for us. It's the only way in. So if we reject Christ, there is no way into the kingdom. If you miss Jesus, you miss everything. There is no well, I'm a decent person. He's going to let me in. There's no caveats. There's no extra rules around it. If we don't have Jesus, we have nothing. Now, Jesus is saying some very hard, difficult things to these people. He wants them to understand because he wants them to examine themselves. Which family do you belong? Which family do you belong? Are you a son or are you a slave? Are you a son? Are you a slave? And then he shifts the focus on to fatherhood. You guys heard that expression, who's your daddy in the 90s? Okay, hey, if you beat somebody really bad in sport, you would say that, to them, hey, I won. Who's your daddy? It's me. It's not, throwing that out there. Jesus kind of slams the Pharisees here in a really big way. Verse 38, I speak of what I have seen with my Father, and you do what you have heard from your father. So then he starts talking about fatherhood. What you've seen in me, I've gotten this from the Father, God the Father, Heavenly Father. You do what you have heard from your father, which is not Heavenly Father, it's the father of this world. They answered him, verse 39, Abraham is our father. So again, Abraham's the father of the Jews. They're saying we go all the way back to Abraham. We have a spiritual religious pedigree. We can trace our lineage and our genealogy all the way back to Abraham. We know who our father is. Jesus, what are you talking about? We can trace it. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. So he says, Abraham I'm talking about something beyond just a physical genealogy. I'm talking about spiritually. And you guys aren't connected. You're not a part. Because if you were, you'd be doing the things that Abraham did and you're not. Now again, we look at, what's the litmus test for us? Can you just give me the recipe of what a Christian should do? I'll do it and I'll be good. Christianity is not a recipe. Not about just filling out the check boxes. Saying, I've done it, I'm good, I'm finished. Okay, what's next? Christianity is about giving our hearts to Jesus, pledging our lives to him for the rest of our lives. Pharisees didn't get this. They were so wrapped up in the law and doing what they needed to. Verse 41, you are doing the works your father did. They said to him, we were not born of sexual immorality. We have one Father, even God. It's an interesting verse here. And I think in some ways they're saying, you can't be saying we have two different fathers, Abraham and then somebody else. Like, what are you saying about us? And I think also, possible, again, we don't see this in the text, so the text is not making this jump, but it's possible what they're doing is they're throwing shade at Jesus, saying, hey, you claim to have a virgin birth. We know that's not true. Look at you. Look at us. Like, we're better than you. Possibly comparing themselves even to Christ, saying that they were better than him. Verse 42, Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me. For I came from God and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. I think love is one of the biggest motivations. When we think of what motivates us in life, there's a lot of things you can do, and you do it for various reasons. Like maybe you hate your job, but you're going to go, right? Because you want that paycheck to make sure you can cover your bills and take care of what needs to happen. You are just doing what's expected of you because there is an exchange of goods. If your employer said again one day like, oh, hey, I got bad news, but kind of good news too. So bad news is there's no more money for your job. I'm not going to pay you. Good news is I'm not going to fire you though. You can work for free. Like, I won't pay you anything, but you just keep showing up 5 o'clock in the morning, keep working. And how many of you are going to keep your jobs? Like, no, I'm out. Like, you're not going to pay me. Why am I doing this? There's a lot more things that I would do. But take something you love to do. You'll do that without money. You'll do that without any exchange of goods. Why? Because your heart and passion is wrapped up in that thing. If it's a hobby you love to do, you'll do that. You don't get paid for hobbies. You actually probably spend a lot of money on those hobbies. If it's a hobby you love. Like if you're a golf player and you love playing golf, I bet you spend a lot of money playing golf. That's an expensive hobby to be a part of. Other hobbies that you're involved in, you'll do it because you love it. And when it comes to Christ, when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to following Jesus, our motivation to follow Jesus is because we love him. We love him. He's given us everything. He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and we follow after Jesus because there's nobody else we'd rather follow. He is Lord, and we love him. And back to the marriage analogy. Maybe you think, hey, in marriage, we're trying just to keep the peace, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep the peace. That's an exchange of goods. But in marriage, our heart should be, same way it was in Jesus, God towards his church, Jesus towards his church, and that was that we should love our wives in such a way, or wives love your husbands in such a way where you're willing to sacrifice whatever for them because you just care about them, you love them. It's that kind of commitment, it's that kind of passion. I'm willing to do whatever for the sake of that person because it's that person and I love them, I care about them. But when any kind of marriage that's just an exchange of goods, hey, I'm going to do what you ask me to do just so that we don't fight. That's not a real marriage, that's a roommate relationship. There's no love in that. We know that's lifeless. In the same way in Christianity, we give our lives to Jesus because we love him. The Jews did not love Jesus here in this passage. They didn't have this love for him and a care for him and a desire to do what he asked them to do. There was no passion, no love, there's no commitment. And again, this isn't just feelings. Let me make sure I want to differentiate between feelings too, because we also live in a world that is so wrapped up in, if it feels good, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't feel good, I'm going to avoid it. And if it's painful, I'm going to avoid it. If it's comfortable or pleasurable, I'm going to do that. It's not about feelings. Again, the disciples, many of them gave up their lives for Jesus. They were martyred and they lost their lives in places because they wanted people to know the truth of who Jesus was. It's not about feelings. It's a heart commitment towards Christ because we love him and we care for him. That's what love's really about. Verse 44, Or verse 43, why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my words. You are of your father, the devil. Imagine if someone just told that to you one day, like, hey, by the way, your father, it's not God, he's actually the devil. And you go, okay, never been told that before. It's not really the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Sometimes we think of Jesus as some kind of really kind Mr. Rogers who's just kind of there, just like singing songs and, having birds dance on his shoulder. And Jesus was not afraid to challenge the religious people of his day and tell them the things that they didn't want to hear. And that's part of truth, right? Truth confronts us and says, I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear. You are actually wicked sinners, and your father is the devil. You need to know that, because your father is not Almighty God. He's actually the devil, and if you don't turn and follow me, you will die in your sins. That's what's going to happen. And I love that Jesus is so raw and honest. It's like, imagine if you went to the doctor, and it was a cancer doctor, and that doctor told you, he saw your scan, it comes back, and he realizes, oh man, this guy has got cancer. He's going to have to go through chemo. It's going to be a rough road. I can't tell him that. Like, he's going to have a hard day if I tell him about this. Like, I don't want to be a bad guy. Like, I'm just going to tell him it looks good and send him on his way. That doctor needs to have his license revoked because he's unwilling to tell you the truth. The truth hurts. It's uncomfortable. It makes us feel things that we don't like to feel. But if we don't reconcile with reality, we will die in our sins. As Jesus told the Jews their father was the devil, he's really showing them grace. He's telling them the things that they need to hear. He goes further about him, verse 44, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Satan's really good at deception and deceiving and has done a great job blinding the eyes of people in this world. To believe lies, to believe falsehood, to live in those lies, to live in that falsehood, and to embrace it. Like, I don't want to see reality. There's an old movie, The Matrix. Some of you guys seen that movie? Hopefully, I don't want to spoil it. It's been around for like 20 years or something now, so if I spoil it, you kind of missed out. You should have seen this a long time ago. But the guy in the movie, the whole point of the movie is that there's this matrix, and it's this perception of this life, this reality that seems good, seems like it's life. And the main character talks to this other guy, and he's like, hey, so do you want to see what's real? He's like, you take this pill, you see what's real. If you don't want to believe what's real, you take this other pill. So he says, I want to see what's real. And he contrasts it with this other character who kind of sees what's real, and he's like, man, I like the fake stuff better because I was comfortable. Man, that's way better. And he chooses to kind of go back into that world and have his mind erased so that he just can live in happiness and frolic around as if like everything's all good. Even though reality is he's just some random guy in some alien tank, which is kind of a crazy movie. So that's not reality, by the way. But in this movie, right, I think it's a good representation of what people in this world do. They'd rather have the fake because it's comfortable. We often choose what's comfortable rather than the truth because we can't stand the pain of the truth. The reality of knowing that we're wicked sinners and we need Jesus and we'll die without him. We need to know that. The world around needs to know that. That's our job as the church, to carry that mission to the ends of the earth. As Jesus shared that message, he's sharing grace to those people. He's preaching the truth to them. And this is a message we need to hear today. Just because we're in this church today, are you truly a part of the family of God, or are you a part of the family of this world? There is no hope without Jesus. We need to examine our hearts. We need to examine our souls. Are we truly a part of the family of God? Which one of you convicts me of sin? Verse 46. If I tell you the truth, why do you not believe me? Whoever is of God hears the word of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. Because you can't understand. If you're blinded, you're deceived, scales are on your eyes, you can't see the truth. You're not of God. And I think for us today, trying to understand which family do we belong to? Who actually is our Father? Is your Father truly the Lord God Almighty? Are you a part of his family? And not just because you have a strong desire to be a part of his family, but if you believed in Jesus and repented of your sins, trust in him. And if you have, we are to cling to that hope for the rest of our lives. The gospel is a daily reminder to us that we have been given so much and been blessed with so much. It is what gets us through the difficult times in life. It's what gets us through the hardships of life. It's what carries us on. Are you clinging to Jesus? Because without him, we have nothing. Everything we've been given as sons and daughters have been given because of what Jesus has done for us on the cross. He's given you much. He's given you much. What are you doing with that in return? Are you living as a son? Or are you part of this family, this world? And maybe for you, you have blinded yourself or let Satan deceive you into thinking that you're a decent person, a good human being, and that you're a part of the family of God when you're not. Again, just filling out a card, just saying a few quotations from a prayer is not what saves us. It is a heart and a life devoted to Christ, saying, I'm with you, Jesus. To the end of life, I'm with you, and I'm giving you everything. Is that you today, or are you just kind of like, I'm going to see if I can try this out? You're not a part of the family of God. Today can be the day. Say, God, Jesus, I'm in this. I'm with you. I'm giving my life to you. All that's mine is yours, and I'm devoting my life. I am all in for you and your kingdom. Which family do you belong to? Let's pray.